Novels are stories. How about drama? Anybody like to participate in drama, put on plays or performances? Right? How about movies? Anybody fan of movies? Yeah, I love movies. I mean, all this last 5 months, I think I'm about Netflix movied out, right? We've been doing that a lot. Maybe you and I might not have the same taste in movies, but one thing I know about books, about plays, about movies, is there's a setting for that story, right? There's always gotta be a setting, a place, and a time. Sometimes in the beginning of a movie, maybe even the opening scene, the music will be playing, you don't know what's gonna happen yet, but it'll show an opening scene, maybe it'll be the skyline of New York City. And then it'll say New York City, and it'll say 2010. Or what if it said New York City, 1854? That's two different stories in it. You kind of need to know when it happened, or else the story's not going to make sense. If you think you're looking at a modern story and all of a sudden it's New York City, 1854, there's no cars, they're like, what's going on here, right? You need to know the when. That's the importance of timelines. It makes the story make sense. So again, every unit, title page is going to have a timeline across the bottom. Don't ignore those. We're always going to take a minute to look at them. I wish your book had more timelines in it. They only have them at the beginning of the unit. Here's another way to understand the importance of timelines. I have some pictures of some of my favorite presidents, the greatest presidents in the classroom. We have George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. Back here I have Ronald Reagan. I have the same three guys over here. They're my three favorite presidents. All right, I say George Washington, the greatest president of the 1700s, Abe Lincoln, the 1800s, Ronald Reagan, the 1900s. Okay? Well, let me ask you something. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, they're all dead. None of them are still alive. And sometimes we think of history as just stories of a bunch of dead people that lived back in the day, whatever, it was before you got here, before I got here. Difference doesn't make. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think George and Abe and Ronald, do you think they ever had lunch together? Why not, man? They're all just from back in the day, back in history. Why didn't they have lunch together?
It was a different time period.
They lived in different times, didn't they? Yeah, they didn't even live at the same time. Just because it was back in the day before you got here doesn't mean it's all the same. You need to understand some timelines or else history won't make any sense. It didn't all happen at the same time, right? It's an unfolding story. I mean, George Washington was dead and buried before Abe Lincoln was ever born. When Abe Lincoln was your age, you know what he was doing? He was learning in his history book about George Washington, the father of his country. Abe Lincoln was long dead before Ronald Reagan was born. When Ronald Reagan was in 8th grade, in his U.S. history book, he learned about George Washington and Abe Lincoln exactly the same as you do. I guess he didn't know he was going to be in the history book someday, but still, that's the importance of timelines. So never underestimate that. So let's look at our timeline. Here, what year does it start?
1992. 1492.
1492, yeah. Wow, that's a long time ago. When you think, to be exact, that is 528 years ago. That's a long time ago. I don't think there's anybody still alive that was alive in 1492, do you? Yeah. And then, if you check that timeline, it goes all the way up to the year 1775. That's a lot of years. That's almost 300 years of history that Unit 1 is covering. 300 years. Do you think there was anybody alive in 1775 that was alive in 1492? Of course not. Alright, so even though both those years are way before we got here, it's important to know the year to understand the story. So I think you already know. You've learned about it all through elementary school. What is significant about the year 1492?
Columbus is a right.
There you go, Columbus discovered America. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, all that good stuff, right? You've learned about that. I bet you probably somebody will remember the name of his 3 ships.
Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
There you go, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. I mean, you probably learned that about every single year in elementary school, right? So, we're not gonna learn any, no, that fact is not gonna be new to us, but let's think about the story about Columbus. He is pretty remarkable. He deserves to be in the history book. He gets credit for discovering America. Well, wait a minute, time out. Was there anybody here when he discovered America?
Yes.
Yeah, who was here?
Indian.
The Indians, Native Americans. Well, wait a minute, how do you get credit for discovering something if there was somebody already here? That would be like somebody walking into our classroom right now, coming in the door and saying, I have discovered room 220. We'd be, wait a minute, we were already here. We kind of knew about it already. You're not that special, right? So Columbus discovered America in 1492, but there were already people here. What's up with that? Well, let's go way back. Not 528 years to 1492. Just keep going back on a timeline, back in time to the year 1. Then keep going back in time. Now we're in BC years, right? And then keep going back in time all the way to the Bible times. Then go all the way back to the beginning. That's Genesis 1:1. In the beginning. Beginning of what? Beginning of time. Right? Adam and Eve. There were only 2 people. Somewhere in the Middle East was the Garden of Eden. Right? And then eventually there was the known world, was the Middle East. And then the Old Testament story of the Tower of Babel. This is what we think. How people got to America. Tower of Babel, that story of the foolish people, and then God scattered them. And a big migration of people, because from the Middle East, eventually they migrated to Europe. It's not hard to see how they migrated to Asia, is it? Or even Africa. Even Australia. You could take a boat between these islands, make it to Australia. But that's a big ocean between Europe and North and South America. So how in the world did people migrate there? Well, now wait. The world's not flat, is it? Yeah, if you look at Northeast Asia and Northwest North America, they almost touch. So, let's see. Here that is. Northeast Asia, Northwest North America is about an inch between them. That body of water is the Bering Strait. We even believe, we have reason to believe, that it was at one time land, like a land bridge. So it's not hard to see how people could have, this didn't happen overnight, didn't happen 1 year, didn't happen in a decade or a century, right? Over hundreds of years, over maybe thousands of years. Eventually people had migrated all over from even in North America and South America. So when we fast forward all the way up to 1492, that explains how there were already people here. So why does he get the credit for discovering it? Well, because what we really mean is he's the first person from the known world where we had recorded history. So that would be Europe and the Middle East. He's the first person from that part of the world to discover America. Still pretty cool. All right, but time out again. Go to page 7 in your textbook. You'll see a picture of a statue of a man named Leif Erikson. And the book tells us that way back in the year 1000, Leif Erikson actually discovered America. So that's 492 years before Columbus. Leif Erikson discovered it. So we go back 500 years, we get to Columbus. Go back 500 years before that, we get to Leif Erikson. That was 1,020 years ago. But see, Leif Erikson, we kind of say he doesn't count because he was a Viking. A Viking is just basically a pirate from Scandinavia. So say a pirate with blonde hair, all right? That's a Viking. And Vikings, pirates, they don't sail for countries. They don't put the flag of their country on their ship because they're not sailing for the country. They sail for themselves. You know, they steal and loot and whatever. So I'm sure the flag on his ship was the skull and crossbones or something, right? It was not the flag of his country. And we have reason to believe that he sailed across the Atlantic, bumped into North America, went back, really didn't tell anybody about it because he wasn't working for anybody. All right, so we don't really care about him. We care about Columbus. Our timeline starts in 1492. So as time went by, even before Columbus arrives on the scene, eventually the people from Europe had gone all the way to the far east. Now that makes sense, right? Think about a compass. North, south, east, west. So if you live in Europe, Asia's to the east, right? Way over here would be the far east. Why did they call it that? That's the far east. The Orient, maybe China today, right? They called it the Far East. And they started getting really interested in that because some Europeans had traveled all the way to the Far East and come back. And they had stuff that does not exist in Europe. They had silk and porcelain and gems and spices and really cool stuff that you can't get in Europe. So people in Europe are like, where'd you get that Far East? Well, we want more of that. So some businessmen from Europe started sending people to the Far East to get all that cool stuff and bring it back in wagons. But you know how that would go, right? That's a long way. A lot can go wrong. There's thieves and bandits. So pretty soon Europeans were looking for a water route to the Far East. Now we can look at this map. They didn't have this map. We know more than they know about how the world was set up.
Sorry, this is the last time I bothered your class today. Peter here?
Yeah.
I need to see you for just a quick second. And Terry, is she Hubbard?
Who?
Terry Nolan?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So there's no water route. Now, I guess if you went this way or that way, right, but it's not a shortcut, but you could take a boat, so that's what they set out to do. And eventually the country of Portugal, which is in Western Europe, became the dominant exploring country. When it comes to explorers, it was all about Portugal at first. And they set out to find a water route to the Far East. So they set sail. They knew they would have to go around the continent of Africa. But remember, they don't have this map. They don't know what it looks like, what it's shaped like. They referred to Africa as the dark continent because it was so mysterious, so unknown. So I can imagine the first one sets sail and goes about maybe this far. No one has ever been that far from Europe before, so they got afraid and turned around and went back and made a new map. All right, and then a year or so later, they try again, maybe get a little farther. Whoa, Africa's bigger than we thought. Go back and make a new map. Eventually, another voyage. I can imagine the guy who got here thought he made it, starts heading east, boing, it's in Africa again. Uh-oh, better go back. Well, after several tries, eventually, Portuguese explorers made it all the way around the southern tip of Africa and made it all the way to the Far East. They did it. They found a water route to the Orient or the Far East. So Portugal is dominating. If you're an explorer, it's all about Portugal. They did it. They did what no other country had done. Well, what's that have to do with Columbus? Well, stay tuned. Here we go. Along comes Christopher Columbus. Now, where's he from? First of all, where's he from? Who did your homework, read the pages? I told you the importance of reading yesterday, so I ask questions like this, I expect you to know. Where's Portugal from? Ethan?
Where's Portugal from?
No, it's all right. Where's Christopher Columbus from? That was a dumb
Portugal.
question. Thank you. What?
Portugal.
He's not from Portugal. It would be good if because he wants to be an explorer, but he's not from Portugal.
England.
He's not from England.
Europe?
Well, Europe is a continent, but what country is Columbus from?
Spain.
Spain? No, not from Spain.
God. Oh, yeah.
To Italy?
He's from Italy. Alright,
I would
so
never guess that.
Columbus is Italian, and he is young, ambitious, explorer. He wants to be in the history book someday. Alright, and the problem is if you're from Italy, that's not good if you're an explorer because Italy's not into exploring. They're into art, pasta, whatever, but they're not into exploring. So he goes and talks to the leaders of Portugal and says, hey, I have an idea. Now listen to Columbus's idea. It sounds crazy. He tells the leaders of Portugal, hey, I'm gonna find a water route to Asia. And they're like, you're a little late, we already did that. We found it. And Columbus goes, no, I'm gonna find a shortcut. Oh yeah, well tell us about that. We would like a shortcut. And Columbus says, I'm gonna get to the Far East by going west. Somebody get this crazy man out of here. Portugal laughs at him. Asia's that way. You wanna go that way? Guy knows what he's talking about, what an idiot. Well, it's not such a crazy idea, is it? I mean, it could be done, because the world's not flat. Obviously, the world's round. So, he could get to the Far East by going west if he went far enough. But there is a problem, right? Columbus knows the earth is round, but he thinks it's more like a baseball when it's more like a basketball. It's a lot bigger globe than he thinks. So if we cut this part of the map off, say that didn't exist, it would be a shortcut, wouldn't it? To go west from Europe and you'd end up here. There's a couple problems, right? At the other side of that ocean that he has to sail, there's a continent nobody knows is there called North America. And then on the other side of that continent, there's a bigger ocean than the one you just crossed called the Pacific before you would ever get to Asia. So again, his idea is not crazy, there's just some information he doesn't have, how big the earth is. Well, he can't sail for Italy, he can't sail for Portugal. Well, he eventually talks to the new king and queen of the country of Spain. There's a pair of young rulers. Just got in charge of Spain. Who am I talking about now?
Ferdinand.
King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella of Spain. A young couple now in charge of Spain, and they are ambitious, and they look at Portugal and they say, you know what? I want Spain to get in on the exploring. I want Spain to become the dominant exploring country. Portugal's getting all the attention, they're getting all the wealth just because they found a water route to Asia. So Columbus goes and visits Ferdinand and Isabella, and he tells them his plan. I want to get to the Far East by sailing west. And Ferdinand and Isabella realize that's not crazy. They say, hey, tell me more. So they agree. They're going to sponsor his voyage. So Columbus, the Italian sailor, is going to sail for the country of Spain. And Ferdinand and Isabella put up all the money. They get him 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. They hire him a crew of men. And it's about this time of year they set sail from Spain with the goal of going west to get to the Far East. Now this is dangerous, right? They're going to go farther out into the open sea than anybody has ever gone. And the men in Columbus's crew are worried. They are scared for their lives. The longer they sail, the farther away from home they get, the more afraid they get. And they think Columbus is nuts. They think he's outside his mind. And they start whispering to each other, this guy's gonna kill us all. We have got to turn around and go home. Nobody's ever been this far away. We're all gonna die. This guy's gonna kill us. They are afraid, what they're afraid of is they think they're going to sail off the edge of the world. If they go too far, they will sail off the edge of the world. Is that possible? No, right? Because the world is round. But they didn't know that. Educated people knew that, but these guys are just, laborers on a ship, they didn't know. But they were afraid they would go too far and sail off the edge of the world and fall. Now, when you think about it, where would they fall to? I don't get that. I don't get it. That's kind of dumb, isn't it? I did see a Goofy cartoon one time where Goofy sailed right up to the edge of the world. And then he put his fingers over the edge and kind of looked underneath of it. That's just dumb, right? That's not possible, just a cartoon. But that's what those men were afraid of. They were also afraid maybe their ships would get swallowed by a giant sea monster. Not gonna happen, right? No such thing. Not gonna sail off the end of the world. You're not gonna get swallowed by a giant sea monster. But they aren't crazy for being scared because they could die. I told you they're sailing this time of year. What do we know about the Atlantic Ocean in the months of August and September and October?
Hurricane.
That's hurricane season. We know all about that, don't we? Well, guess what? That hasn't changed. 1492, 2020. This time of year is hurricane season in the Atlantic. So that they all could have died easily. So this is a very dangerous trip. So they start plotting behind Columbus's back. His crew is planning a mutiny. What is a mutiny? What does that word mean? Maddox?
Rebellion.
A rebellion, where they're gonna rebel against Columbus as the leader, either tie him up, put him below deck, or throw him overboard, whatever. But they plan on getting rid of Columbus, turning those ships around and going back to Spain before they all die. Well, Columbus isn't stupid. He knows what they're plotting. So one day in October, he finally gets everybody together and says, look, I know what you guys are thinking. I know you're afraid. I'm scared too. But man, we've come this far. Let's just go. Give me 3 more days. Let's sail west for 3 more days. And if we don't find land in 3 days, then you don't have to do a mutiny. I will give the order. We'll turn the ships around and go back to Spain. So they agree. All right, 3 more days going west. Now Columbus starts praying hard. Because if they don't find land in 3 days, he's got to go back to Spain. What do you think's going to happen to his career as an explorer? Do you think Ferdinand and Isabella are going to be happy?
Mm-mm.
No, they wasted all that money to sponsor his trip and he quit. I don't think anybody else will ever hire him as an explorer. No one else will ever sponsor any voyages by Columbus. So his career as an explorer will be over. He sure won't be in the history book. Right? Except he might be in the history book for being the dumbest explorer ever, the guy who tried to get to the east by going west. He'll be the laughing stock of Europe. I can just picture it. Can you picture Columbus walking down the sidewalk any day for the rest of his life? Anybody that passes him, like, that's him. That's Columbus. They tease him. They yell at him, hey, you're going the wrong way. Right? No matter what, they always tease him he's going the wrong way because he thought he could get to the east by going west. So he does not want to be the laughing stock of Europe. So he's really hoping they find land within the next 3 days. Well, guess what? On day 2, October 12th, 1492, the guy up in the crow's nest looking out over the horizon, off through the distance in the clouds, could it be? Land ho. They discovered land. He did it. Alright, so looking at this map, kind of a close-up of that area. Here's Florida. Alright, we know what that means. We're right here. Well, over here, these islands, the Bahamas. I circled it, put a little star by it. There's a little island there. Columbus actually named it San Salvador. So you might say, Columbus was the very first person ever to take a cruise to the Bahamas. Yeah, how about that? So he did it. And Columbus is here and looks up at the big continent and says, there, look, Asia. Uh-oh. Is he right?
No.
No, he's lost. See, he thinks he's here, and that's Asia, but he's actually here. Did you hear me? He's here, but thinks he's here. You know what you call that? That's called lost. You ever been lost?
Yeah.
Yeah, like first day of school, I was teaching in here, some kid came to the door, walked in the room, realized he was in the wrong room, was embarrassed, turned around, walked out, he was lost, right? In my family, my wife and my kids, they make fun of me because I go the wrong way all the time. I like lead the world in U-turns. I'll back out of the driveway and go the wrong way, I'm always going the wrong way. And I'll be driving and say, oh, I'm going the wrong way, gotta turn around. And my wife and kids, they'll just like roll their eyes, like, oh gee, wow, that's something new, you know, cause I'm always going the wrong way. But I always tease, I say I've never been lost. I always say, I've been a bit bewildered, but I've never been lost. Whatever, right, cause I don't like to admit that I'm lost. Well, Columbus is lost. He's here, and thinks he's here. Alright, let me show you on this one. Could you be any more lost than this? He is here, off the coast of North America, and spin the globe around to the opposite side. He thinks he's here. He is literally on the other side of the world from where he thinks he is. Even I've never been that lost. You can't get more lost than that. Why do we consider him a great explorer? Well, because he is, because stay tuned, story's not over. By the way, check out the label on this map. What do we call these islands? The West Indies. These are the Indie Islands, off the coast of India. So since that's where Columbus thinks he is, even to this day, we call these islands the West Indies. Why do we do that? Because Columbus was lost. What did Columbus call the people that he
Indians.
discovered here?
Indies.
Indians. They're not from India. They're out from the opposite side of the world of India. But to this day, we refer to Native Americans as Indians. Why? Because Columbus was lost. Pretty crazy. And then over the next several years, he made a bunch more voyages back and forth. And after a while, one of his friends, a man by the name of Amerigo Vespucci, starts looking at things, analyzing and thinking it through, and he says, hey, Columbus, I don't think that's Asia. I don't think these are the Indie Islands. Columbus says, like, of course they are. I'm a great explorer. I got to the Far East by sailing west. I'm gonna be in the history book someday. And Amerigo Vespucci says, yeah, but I don't think that's what we did. I think what you did is something even better. You discovered a whole new world, a new continent. That's not Asia, it's a whole new continent. Columbus is like, shut up. Because to him, that would have meant he was a failure, because his goal was to get to the Far East by sailing west. If what Amerigo Vespucci is saying is true, which of course it is, this is a new continent, then Columbus thinks he's a failure and won't make it into the history book. Yeah, well, he will, won't he? Because Amerigo Vespucci's right, and discovering a new world is a lot better than finding a shortcut. Can you imagine if that were to happen today? If we were to see on the news tonight that some explorer somewhere found an entirely new continent, I mean, not gonna happen, right?
That'd be impossible.
Of course, because we have satellites in space and we pretty much understand the world. There's no continents we haven't discovered yet, right? But what if it would? I mean, that's crazy. Maybe something we could relate to. How about an astronaut? They're kind of explorers, right? They explore space, right? So what if the United States sent out an astronaut and they discover a whole new planet? And on that planet, there's plants, there's animals that don't exist on Earth, and there's people already there. Would that be big news?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be like the biggest news story that we've ever heard, if there's another planet with people on it. Well, think about it. That's basically what Columbus did in 1492. he discovered a whole new world, and there were already people there, and exotic plants and animals that did not exist in Europe. Pretty amazing. No wonder he's in the history book. Well, it was after that, years later, as we gained more and more knowledge of the world, and we started making more and more accurate maps. There was, I believe, a German map maker drawing a map of the world, labeling his map. You've all done that for an assignment, right? You get a map, you gotta label the countries and the rivers and whatever. And he got to this part of the world, and he was going to label it, and every other map always said New World. Well, how long can you call something new? After years and years and years, they were still calling it the New World. It's kind of like this building that we're sitting in right now. To me, this is a new building. But it was built about, I don't know, 25 years ago. But when I first got DCS, this building didn't exist. There was the gym and that elementary building down that way. There was no high school building, and this building wasn't here. Right here, of course, down on the ground, we're up in the air, but down on the ground was a tetherball court. We are sitting above an old tetherball court. So I call this the new building. And there's an even newer one. The high school building is way newer than this one. But to me, it's still new. Well, nobody else calls this the new building, right? It's pretty old by now, right? So when they were labeling their map, calling this the New World was getting kind of old. So the guy that wanted to name it, he could have named it after the guy who discovered it. He could have named it Columbia, North Columbia and South Columbia. And we would be then the United States of Columbia. That would have made sense. Honor Columbus. But he decided not to. He decided to name it after the guy who figured out that it was a new world, Amerigo Vespucci. So we call it America. Any questions so far?
Well, that just shows how Columbus was, like, he wasn't the guy to cause he knew that the other guy, he knew that the other guy found out that he was not in, Asia, he found out that he was in another place, so it was like kind of him to actually give the other guy credit and not himself. It just shows what kind of person he is.
But I don't believe it was Columbus that actually named it. It was another map maker. But Columbus gets plenty of credit, right? He's in the history book. He's actually more famous than Amerigo Vespucci is, as we use the other guy's name. All right, well, I'm gonna show you a video clip. It's October 12th, 1492. Apparently, somebody on one of the ships, maybe the Pinta, must have had a cell phone or something. Because then we got some video footage of this. That's Columbus. Does not want to turn around. is happy because he's not gonna get thrown overboard. He doesn't have to go back to Europe and be the laughing stock of Europe, right? And all his crew is happy because they're not gonna sail off the edge of the world. They're gonna survive. Pretty amazing day, October 12th, 1492, and of course it's important to us, because here we are, 528 years later. A lot has happened. Well, what's happened since then? Oh, that's the rest of the book. All right, that's the rest of the school year. By the way, when Columbus got on land, he fell to his knees and he thanked God and prayed. See, Columbus was Catholic, like everybody else in Europe in those days in 1492. Right? In fact, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. All right, so here's your assignment.